Hello everybody, my name is Peyton and today I will be discussing humanism as interpreted by high Renaissance artists. Renaissance humanism was the idea that any individual could shape their own future by the way they lived their life, and this took place from the 1300s to the 1600s. Humanism placed greater emphasis on pleasures and social values opposed to spiritual values. Now, this did not mean that people at this time were anti-religion. However, they slowly started to drift away from everything being church-related and started to appreciate their artistic talents. Humanism also had greater influence on its subject matter. The first piece I will be talking about today is The School of Athens by Raphael. This piece was created from 1509 to 1511. The School of Athens represents the great philosophers, scientists, and mathematicians at the time, all gathered together sharing their ideas, as well as learning from one another. Not all these figures lived at the same time. However, in this painting, they are all gathered under one roof together. At the center of the School of Athens is Aristotle, who is located on the right, and Plato, who is on the left. These two are extremely important in creating different ways of thinking, and their different philosophies were later incorporated into Christianity ideas. The second piece that I will be talking about today is The Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci. And this piece was created around 1490 using pen and ink with mash over metal point on paper. This drawing represents the ideal human body proportions. Leonardo da Vinci studied human anatomy before creating this drawing. And here's a short video on the Vitruvian Man.
In 1490, Leonardo da Vinci combined art, mathematics, and science to draw what he believed to be the ideal proportions of the human body, and has been famously dubbed the Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man attains its name because Leonardo drew and theorized upon human proportions based on the geometry written by the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius in his treatise De Architectura. Vitruvius described the human figure as being the principal source of proportion among the classical orders of architecture, and believed that the ideal body should be about 8 heads high. Also known as the canon of proportions, or less popular, the proportions of man, this drawing has been used as a symbol for the essential symmetry of the human body as well as the universe as a whole. Notice that, like the Philosopher's Stone and many other alchemical and magical works, Leonardo uses the circle and the square, symbolizing the macro and the micro, the material world and spirit, or man and the universe. Though certainly not expressed in these terms, Leonardo understood the world to be a series of fractal patterns repeating themselves at variant levels and size. Essentially, he was a proponent of the Hermetic adage, as above, so below, and believed that working on the human body was analogous to working on the universe itself. Leonardo articulates man as the microcosm in this quote found in his notes related to the Vitruvian Man. Quote, "By the ancients, man has been called the world in miniature, and certainly this name is well bestowed because inasmuch as man is composed of earth, water, air, and fire, his body resembles that of the earth." Unquote. Despite many initially only seeing 2 poses, the Vitruvian Man was actually designed by Da Vinci to contain 16 various combinations and poses within it. Today, the original Vitruvian Man is kept under lock and key at the Galleria dell'Accademia in Venice and is occasionally on display for the public.
I think that video did a really good job explaining the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci and how he studied human anatomy before creating it. The next piece I'll be talking about is Primavera by Sandro Botticelli, and this piece was created in the late 1470s to the 1480s, and it depicts classical mythology figures such as the god of Mercury, the 3 graces dancing together, the god of spring, and Primavera in the center. The artwork Primavera literally means spring and is located in a museum in Florence. The painting, however, was originally created for Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco, who was married in May of 1482. The setting of this scene takes place in an orange grove, which is fitting because the family had adopted the orange tree as their family symbol. This painting, being created for their wedding, would have been seen for the first time by Lorenzo's wife. It would have also hung in their bedroom, which is why many believe that the Cupid at the very top was added into the painting. Finally, I will be talking about the Statue of David by Michelangelo. This statue was created from 1501 to 1504, and it was made out of marble. The statue portrays David, a biblical hero who was heavily favored in Florence. The statue represented the defense of civil liberties embodied in the Republic of Florence. And here's a short video on the Statue of David.
Florence was long an economic powerhouse. Rather than its church, it's the city hall, once the palace of the Medici family that towers over the main square. Michelangelo's David originally stood here. This is a copy. The original David is the centerpiece of the nearby Accademia Gallery, which feels like a temple to humanism. At its altar, one very impressive human. The shepherd boy, David, sizes up the giant. Thoughtful and self-assured, he seems to be thinking, I can take him. The statue was an apt symbol, inspiring Florentines to tackle their Goliaths. When you look at David, you're looking at Renaissance man. Artists now made their point using realism. They did this by merging art and science. For instance, Michelangelo actually dissected human corpses to better understand anatomy. This humanism was not anti-religion. Now people realized that the best way to glorify God was not to bow down in church all day long, but to recognize their talents and to use them. Artists like Michelangelo even exaggerated realism to make their point. Notice David's large and overdeveloped right hand. This is symbolic of the hand of God. It was God that powered David to slay the giant. And Florentines like to think God's favor enabled them to rise above rival neighboring city-states. The nave-like hall leading to David is lined with Michelangelo's unfinished prisoners, struggling to break out of the marble. Michelangelo believed these figures were divinely created within the rock. He was simply chiseling away the excess. Here we see the Renaissance love of the body as Michelangelo reveals these compelling figures. While these statues are called unfinished, perhaps Michelangelo was satisfied he'd set them free, and he moved on to other challenges.
So overall, this time period was not anti-religion, but it slowly started to incorporate ideas of philosophy, science, and math. People started realizing that the best way to worship was to use their talents. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.